Good morning. Good to be with you on a sort of chilly Wednesday morning. Hope your Wednesday is off to a good start and you've got a good cup of coffee with you. I'm in the sanctuary at First United Methodist Church here in Hamlet. It's one of my two, the other one being Fellowship United Methodist. And you can tell just by the backdrop that we're decorated. Got the candles here, a lot of beautiful red poinsettias at the back of the church. Wreaths up. The white poinsettia is beautiful in here. It's beautiful in here. This past Sunday, if you were here in worship at Fellowship or First United Methodist churches, you'd know that we began the season of Advent. And if you're watching and you're from somewhere else, you'd also know that if your church is more liturgical, that this past Sunday marked the beginning of Advent. And if you're listening in and your church doesn't do Advent, there's some that don't. Advent it's the season leading up to Christmas. It's the 4 Sundays before Christmas. So you see whatever day Christmas is, and then the 4 Sundays back from that. And normally Advent begins the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Not always, it depends on how the calendar falls, but normally it'll be the first Sunday after Thanksgiving. When you look here beside me, I've got an Advent wreath. And there are 4 candles, and each of the candles has a separate meaning. This past Sunday, we lit the candle of hope right here, and then the upcoming Sunday, the candle of peace. And then, I'm not certain whether you can see it, there's the pink candle, the candle of joy, and then there's the candle of love. Those 4 Sundays as we progressively count down closer to Christmas. I'm not certain whether you can see it in my camera shot here, but in our more liturgical churches, the color of the paraments, like the cloth over the altar table, the cloth over the pulpit, etc., will have changed to be either purple or blue. Purple or blue are used as the colors for Advent because they are colors that are associated with royalty. They're royal colors. So that is sort of a super brief introduction to Advent as to what it is. The 4 Sundays before Christmas, the Advent wreath where you light each Sunday an additional candle counted down towards Christmas. Our churches are decorated, and the colors for the season are either purple or blue. But what are the origins of it? Like an awful lot of things that we do in worship, the origins are ancient and a little inexact, a little fuzzy, if you will. If you go back to 380 A.D., there was a church council, the Council of Saragossa, and that council met to deal with something totally other than Christmas, etc. They met to deal with a growing heresy. But among the things that the council told the faithful to do was to make certain that they did not miss worship on the 3 Sundays before Epiphany. And to make certain that they were in worship those 3 Sundays, and to take that time as a season of penance. And that appears to be the very earliest season that we can sort of equate to Advent. And the practice stuck. The length of it varied somewhat, the timing of it varied somewhat over the next 200 or 300 years, and by the 600s AD, which is now 1400 years ago, it was pretty well set at the 4 Sundays before Christmas. The 4 Sundays before the celebration of Christmas we're going to be a season of Advent. And the very word Advent, in case you were wondering, means coming. It means coming. And so we are preparing ourselves for the coming of Jesus, for the coming of Christ. Now this leads to what may be an obvious question, and a very good one. Why in the world do we do it anyway? Why do we do Advent? If your church doesn't do Advent, I think it's a great practice. I think it's a fantastic practice, even if you're not a more liturgical church. Methodists, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Episcopalians, certainly Roman Catholics, all do liturgical stuff. But even if you're not in that broad tradition, I think it's a great practice. So why would we want to do it? Advent is a season of preparing for Jesus' coming. We are preparing for the coming of Jesus. And historically, that has had sort of a double meaning. And the first is preparing for the coming of Christ as a judge and ruler of the world. In fact, the given lectionary texts for the first Sunday of Advent typically all focus on the second coming. So the first point of Advent is to focus on the coming of Christ as the ruler of the world at some point in the future. The other purpose of Advent is preparing ourselves for Christmas, the celebration of Christ coming into the world as a baby, for his incarnation. And there's another way that we can look at this coming of Jesus into the world, which is almost as important as the first two. Christ still comes into the world now. Jesus still comes into the world now because he can still meet us now. He can enter our lives right now at any point, and we should all hope and pray that we encounter him very often. So when we think about Advent, we're preparing for the coming of Christ as the judge and ruler of the world at some point in the future. We're preparing to celebrate his incarnation, the coming of Christ as a human, the coming of the Son of God as a human, as a baby. And then we prepare for the coming of Christ, knowing that he can meet us and in 1,001 different ways in any walk of our life. And to me, it is very important that we do Advent, that we try to do it right. Our culture messes us up. Our culture, we have the season of Halloween, right? We got the season of Halloween, which is from the end of August until the third week of October. And if by the third week of October you haven't bought anything to decorate your house, bought your candy, it's too late because it's all gone out of the stores anyway. So from the end of August till like the third week of October, you've got the season of Halloween. And by the end of October, you've got Christmas. Everywhere you look, you've got Christmas up. There's Christmas music playing in the stores and all of that. And you see, if we are immersed in Christmas, if we're immersed in that for a month and a half or 2 months before Christmas Day, by the time Christmas Day comes, guess what? We're sort of over it, aren't we? Spend 2 months hearing Frosty the Snowman and humming Joy to the World, and by the time Christmas Day comes, you can't wait to get that stinking tree out of the house. And that's no way to celebrate the coming of Christ. That is no way at all to celebrate the coming of Christ. So Advent is a way of slowing that down. Advent is our way of slowing that down to focus on what's most important. Advent is how we focus on what's most important. And so we prepare for the coming of Christ, whether it's as judge and ruler of the world, or as baby in a manger, or Christ who can meet us any Sunday in worship, or anywhere else. But this is how we prepare to meet Christ. And as we prepare to meet Christ in Advent, it's a great idea during the season of Advent to try to worship a little more. I know that can be difficult in the midst of pandemic, but there are ways. During the season of Advent, we can worship a little more. We can try to give a little more, to love a little more. So that is the season of Advent. If you don't have an Advent wreath in your house, I think it's a great idea. You can pick up the 4 candles for an Advent wreath at pretty much any Christian bookstore, Christian supply store. So it's going to be 3 purple candles and a pink one, and each Sunday at your dinner table, light the next candle. So if you pick one up today, at supper tonight, light a purple candle. And then this coming Sunday, you light the next purple candle. The 3rd Sunday of Advent, you'll light the pink one. And then the 4th Sunday, you'll light the last candle in your Advent wreath. So pick yourself up an Advent wreath and use that as a way of counting down the days until we celebrate Christ's birth. I hope that you enjoy your Advent season. I hope that this Advent season is blessed for you, that you obviously get your houses decorated and get the presents underneath the tree and all of that stuff, because that's important too. But most importantly, as we go through the season of Advent, most importantly, let's prepare our hearts and our minds and our lives to meet Jesus. The baby of a manger many years ago, and Jesus who will come again in glory as judge and ruler of the world. Have a great and blessed Wednesday.